Like,
Boy, it sure does feel like you ever. Here we are at the Off the Rails podcast. I'm with the co-host with the most, Scott. My man Scott, he had some medical stuff going on Monday, so we were deprived of his infinite wisdom with motorsports and all things that are March Madness. If you could hit that like and subscribe button, Scott always reminds me of that. Leave some comments. I'm getting some really good comments over on the other side, but let's see if you guys can step up out there in the podcast. How you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Hey, 1, 2, and 3. Who picked those top three players in the NASCAR, huh? The five
Wow.
showed up and won. The five
Yes.
showed up. Bubba was there, right? And
Yep.
then yeah, man, I
You
just
had
drew,
you had Carl. You had Kyle
yeah,
Larson.
yeah, and
You
Larson.
you you had Bubba Wallace. Bubba
Yeah,
Wallace for a top five. Um.
uh-huh.
Uh. I don't have my sheet with
Bowman.
me. Yeah, I know
Bowman, the
Bowman. Yeah.
showman.
Yeah.
The 48, the Bowman, the showman, Alex Bowman was there. He had it. He was in the lead. And then he tried to do the wall thing like Larson does so well, keeping that right rear bumping against that wall and getting that speed. Somehow that guy can do it there. And, he went up to the wall, tried to find that speed, and he got pulled in. That front end got hit, slowed him down.
Yeah.
And then here
He
came
got
Larson.
past. That was it.
Yeah, but the super sweep is still only done by Kyle Busch. The super sweep, three races, the truck, Xfinity, and the big boys, the Cup, has only been done by Busch. One time at Bristol. I believe it was Bristol. Larson
Okay.
was there. He finished fourth in Xfinity. He was going to win it. Late caution changed everything. That
Oh
guy,
wow.
that guy knows how to race Homestead. And the reason why I say Homestead, he races well, is because of this. He's so dominant, but he's only won there once, now
Right.
twice.
Right.
He's not like a Jimmy Johnson that show up to Dover and just kill it.
Sure.
Or like
Harvick at Phoenix.
yeah, Richard Petty at
Hmm.
Martinsville. Richard Petty everywhere in his in his
Yeah.
in his in his
Yeah.
top of
I think he just
yeah
placed last week. Yeah.
yeah. And then McLaren F1. I mean it's really hurting Jay. It's really
You
it's
know,
really hurting.
I let's talk a couple quick things about
Uh,
F1.
yeah, let's
Um
do it.
um First of all, Pasantra and Lando Norris 1-2. You called it. You called it before the season started how in tune you thought McLaren was. I thought Verstappen was going to be more of a threat the way he came out of Australia. He got a fourth, which was fine. But let's get to a deeper thing. And I don't know if you really followed this. It happened late last night.
Liam,
Red Bull fired the other driver, and they
Liam,
fired Liam, and they brought in the that
you
Japanese gentleman.
Yuki.
Yeah, Yuki.
Yep.
And I don't maybe you understand that ecosystem a little better than me. I mean, how do they I just don't understand how they fire the driver like that and just bring in somebody else and put him in the car. Like, I don't get that.
So, so what I've been, I mean, I'm not a big F1 guy, but what I've been
Right,
finding out and, been hearing and listening to is that the Red Bull is so it's designed for Verstappen. Sorry, that's easy
right,
for me to
right,
say.
right,
It's
right.
so designed that the second car is nowhere near, the second driver
Correct.
can't drive the car.
Right,
And Verstappen's having a lot of problems. He came out at the race and said, "We have no speed. We're not going to be a contender at all." That's
right.
horrible to hear that, unless you're Kyle Busch, and then you're like,
Yeah,
effing Bush did this, which
yeah.
he could be that guy. But you know, I I didn't think it was a big deal. And then they did that whole had him start in the pit box, which I've never seen. But then again, I'm not an F1 person. I guess you get
Right,
penalized if you change parts that are illegal that you can't change, and then they make them start there because there's certain
right.
type of asphalt, like we kind of talked about, and the asphalt's even more rubberized and sticky for where they launch off in the launch pad, right?
Correct.
and
Right.
then and then the pit box, they're slippery. So they lost the advantage there. um I think the practice times and everything, he is just not up to speed. Yuki has been overlooked for a long time, but I think he's still going to have the issue. I mean, this is the great thing about Red Bull. You know, they say they don't have two teams, but they do have two teams. They're able to
Right,
pick this guy up and put him insert right in. You
right,
know, it's not like he's going from a Ford to a Chevy and he has to relearn everything.
right,
You know,
right,
and you know when they were in Australia, I kept on hearing this about like, oh, they're going to get rid of Liam because he's not showing up. I'm like, wow,
right,
you know,
right.
how much can he?
I thought it was just smoke. I just
Yeah,
thought that I thought, how do you not go through at least 6 races with the guy?
well,
I mean, but
well,
no.
F1 is the elite. They
Yeah,
have all the money. They're not going to wait for you to be in the back unless you're
right,
Haas.
right,
But
right.
Haas showed up. They were there. You know,
Yeah,
they
but I
you
mean,
know,
it's like, who's the second driver at Ferrari? I mean, yeah, it's all, they create now. McLaren does seem to have two up and coming stars, but you have teams like Red Bull and Ferrari that are created around one entity, like the
yeah.
Schumacher thing, and
Hmm.
everything I've always felt, I don't know how you feel, is the second driver is just collecting data so the first guy can be better.
Yeah, but
Like,
who is the second driver in Ferrari? Who's one and who's two?
I don't know.
I well,
Whoa, 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 whoa. We all
who
know
got
the
told?
ecosystem is around Hamilton, don't we think?
No, he got told to pull over and let his teammate in front of him
Oh, I
with a
didn't see that.
broken wing. He had a broken wing in the front turn. He crashed into Hamilton. Excuse me for not knowing his name,
No,
you
no,
know,
yeah,
because
yeah.
Hamilton's all about,
Yeah,
that's a champion. That's a champion. That's why we know his name, right?
yes.
But in the first turn, Hamilton went to squeeze in. He tried pinching him down, broke his wing, his
Right,
left front wing. And then F1 never pulled him in to say it was, this is too much that you might ruin your car and ruin other
right,
people. They let him race. This guy has a damaged car, and they tell Hamilton to drop back. And then Hamilton barely gets fifth. And then,
right,
and then he gets they have these shorts, these sprints, and I woke up seeing that Hamilton won, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is huge! I gotta watch this because I don't wake up at 4 in the morning to watch F1. I
yeah.
watch the rerun. I watch
All
the
right.
rebroadcast. My bad." Anyways, so I find out it's these sprints that he won, so Ferrari's
Right,
excited, you
right,
know. But to come to find out, he wins the sprints. Then he finishes fifth, and
right,
then he gets docked because his car's too light,
right.
and he loses all his points.
I
You know,
didn't I don't look, we're learning with everybody. Scott and I
yeah,
are pretty competitive. We're
yeah.
researching it every week. I didn't understand what the sprint was. I thought it was all about the GP, but
Yeah,
you know what? I'm learning, and I don't know. I mean, we
yeah.
didn't see a sprint in Australia, so I
No,
don't
it's
understand.
certain races that they have the
Right,
sprint, and they get all excited about it because it makes the qualifying and whatever more exciting. Which I wish I would
right,
have watched it.
right. Right. Okay, so we didn't catch that on Friday. Okay. We
Yeah,
just
we missed that. My bad.
yeah. And I
My
actually
bad.
started watching the race because God bless you on the West Coast here in the United States, it comes on ESPN at what, 12:30 or 1 or whatever time it is.
Four
Just
a.m.
depending on where, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
4 a.m. is that's when it came on.
yeah.
Oh my God. Well, I guess we're going to see. I don't, you know what? I didn't really plan going this deep into F1, but it is kind
All
of
right.
cool. I'm not even sure where they are going this week. If they are, or if they got
Yeah,
2 weeks, I'm not. We'll get
yeah,
up to that on Friday. Friday is our
yeah,
motorsports.
yeah.
So let's get into the NCAA tournament, March Madness. We got done with the first
Woo!
weekend. Um,
Woo!
you know, I don't know if you saw my short on the radical NCAA proposal I have. I'm telling you, I'm a goddamn genius. I'm telling you right now that they should just look. The big lament is there's no upsets. There's no really close games. The chalk are winning. So what they need to do is go to 112 teams. Wait. You're going to see the brilliance.
All
the
right.
first the first 48 are all going to get a bye. Then we have 64 playing in to get to the 16 to fill out the 64. You're going to get an extra weekend of basketball games, and the 16 teams that come in at the bottom end of the bracket are going to be ready to go. Now, If you remember the college football playoff, the first four teams that got a bye lost when they had the week off. They lost the next week. So if you got 16 teams that already have 2 games, 2 wins under their belt, go ahead. Let's see what happens when they play a number 2 seed. Let's see what happens when they play a number 3 seed. I think we're going to see a lot more exciting games.
Very possible. I'm not going to deny that. But the big thing is TV, right? Who are they overlapping? Right now, we are in a huge spot in sports. There's so much going on. You're going to have to go against the MLB. You know, football's always around the corner. You know, we got golf. You know, hey, you're jumping Lindsey Vaughn getting silver. That chick is back.
Well, she did. She did came back in the last race of the season. It's
Yeah.
all about
Yeah.
Michaela Schifrin, but
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
but hold on, hold on, hold
Actually,
on a
but
second.
I'm just saying there's so much TV. How are you going to squeeze that in? The March Madness is this little duration that we get to really focus on.
Okay,
You know,
okay,
I
okay,
like where
okay,
you're going,
okay.
but you
Okay,
know,
hold on,
I
hold
think
on,
it's
hold
going to get
on.
flooded.
We
Yeah.
we just moved college basketball back 1 week. So instead of this conference championship week, that's the first round of the
Okay.
NCAA. Look,
All
they
right.
they start in November. So
Yeah.
I mean, all you got to do instead of you starting the second week of January with your conference play, start in the first week. I mean,
Yeah.
and also let's
All
call
right.
it what it is, and you're going to understand this better than anybody. Is there's and CBS is paying $1.1 billion for 63 games. What happens if you add another 48?
Yeah.
Now the number's 2 billion.
Yeah.
It's all about product. Why do you
Yeah. It
think the
is.
NFL is trying to get to 20 games?
Yeah.
Because they see the revenue is so astronomical. How did the NBA get a 78 billion and that's with a billion-dollar contract with ESPN and ABC? Because they've got product and that's what everybody needs. What?
Yes.
Yep. So we're gonna see. Let's look at some of the games. Let's start with our Thursday games. Arizona Wildcats and Duke Blue Devils. Duke is a 9.5 point favorite. What do you think about that game, Scott?
Duke's going all the way, baby. Duke. The
Okay.
Blue Devils. The Blue Devils are all the way. Hey, you were calling about no upset. What about St. John? They got upsetted. They're out. Number two's gone.
Yeah. I mean,
You know what I mean? They're
they did. I mean, but honestly, Scott, the only buzzer beater was Colorado State, Maryland. Okay,
yeah,
yeah, I know a number 2 seed lost, but we all know Calipari. I mean, it wasn't like Monmouth. It wasn't like somebody upsetting Purdue in the first round. I
I
mean,
get it.
it's still I'm not going to say Arkansas is a blue blood, but you knew there was something coming. I'm not
Yeah,
saying I didn't predict the upset. I'm not going
yeah.
that far,
I
but
know.
it
I get
didn't
it.
really come as a shock. Like, look, I will say this, the two best games I've seen in a tournament, Florida and UConn was just a war. That was like an NBA game. Okay. That's the
Yeah,
number 1 seed. And also Houston against Gonzaga. That was literally like game 7 of an NBA series. But
yeah.
other than that, I mean, the other 48 games I saw, I was like, or 46, I'm like, all right, I guess, but it wasn't really that nail biter we're typically used to.
I get it. When you're watching Duke going in the first round, who they go against? Some Miami team, whatever.
Right.
The other number one seeds have all went down, and Vegas came out and gave them 20 points. Gave them
Yes.
20 points. And then the coach is like, we made the playoffs. They should give us some respect. And then Duke's over there going, okay, watch us yard this out in the first half.
Right.
And they just annihilate them. I mean,
Right.
I don't know if you get the bye and you do that, and if they sit that cold, that Duke is going to get overwhelmed. I think you're going to give more video for these guys to get prepped for that team. You know,
Yeah.
I the top teams get that depth, they get the coaching, and they're just that much stronger. You when you only give them a limited time to watch video to get ready, that is how the upset happens. And this year, it's not really happening. You're right about that.
Well, I really think the big factor is the NIL money. And what's
Yeah,
happening is you get a guy and he's quote unquote a 5 star and Duke recruits him and he goes, God, I'm going to probably be the fourth or fifth guy here on this team, but they're going to give me 250 grand. Now, I can go to, let's just say, UC Riverside, and I could be the stud on the stud, but honestly, they don't have any NIL money. So
Right.
maybe I'll go to Duke for 2 years and then transfer out and become the stud at Illinois or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
I don't blame the kids for grabbing the cash in that first year or two. These teams that have big NIL money, we're seeing it, especially in the SEC, because they have such huge TV contracts. Look,
Right.
7 SEC teams made the second weekend. I
Right.
mean, wow. And the Big Ten was 8-0 in the first round. I mean,
Yep.
the teams, and I'm a huge UCLA fan. I hated that they sold their soul and left the Pac-12, but I understand the money part because their
Yeah.
TV contract was double,
Yeah.
right?
Double, and then you get to pull these kids in, and then like my boy Cynical Jay says, you bring in
Yeah.
the hot cheerleaders so they can actually walk the kids around. You
Hell
know,
yeah.
I don't know why Jay says that. It's all about the
I don't know.
sports.
It's
It's
all
the
about the sports.
it's all about the
It's all
sports. It's
about
not about
it's all about the hardwood, Scott.
yeah. The
And I don't mean a
hardwood. Wink,
euphemism there.
wink.
Okay, wink, wink.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. You picked up what I'm laying down. I know the kids used to say it. I know they don't anymore, and they're probably looking at it
No,
going, "Wow, what's
no.
that old man saying?"
Yeah. They're
Uh,
saying that's not gas. That's what they're saying. That,
okay, thank you for keeping me up to date on what's going on. All right, let's go to the second Thursday game. Arkansas Razorbacks. We just talked about them against the Texas Tech Red Raiders. They are a five and a
oh,
half point favorite.
oh. I like Texas Tech.
Yeah,
I
I do
I think
too. I'm not
yeah.
sure. I don't have any say on the point spread there, but I do like Texas Tech. I think Arkansas is kind of they just played it out. I don't know. That's just my feeling.
The slipper's about ready to fall off. Let's get
That's
that
what I
straight.
think. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The finishing up the Thursday games, my Cinderella team, the BYU Cougars, still around against the number 2 Alabama Crimson Tide. Alabama's a 5.5 point favorite.
Bama. Bama. Hey, this is all about the ones and twos now. The
Yeah,
Cinderellas are starting to disappear.
yeah,
Gonzaga, first time in how many years? Five,
yeah.
6 years that they're not in the Sweet 16.
Yeah. I mean, that was just luck of the draw.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, if they would have played anybody but Houston in that bracket, they were
Florida.
going to win.
Florida.
Well,
If
no,
they're
I
in the
mean
other
they're
side,
not in
yeah,
that bracket.
on their
They're
side,
not in
yeah, on
that
their
bracket.
side,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. But I'm
on your
saying
side,
anybody in that bracket, they were down 1 point with 1 minute left. I mean,
yeah,
they Mark Few is truly, I think, the best coach in college basketball. I'm going to make a lean here. I like BYU with the points. I think Alabama's going to win the game, but man, I just have so much respect for BYU. Okay,
yeah.
here's the game I'm really intrigued at. It's going to cap off the Thursday. Maryland Terrapins at the Florida Gators. Gators are -6.5.
Well, I, the Gators are just too strong and too deep, but it's going to be a stellar game. I'm
Yeah.
really worried about Maryland just holding them down.
Hmm.
I'm really worried about them holding them down. They can do it. They can absolutely upset this game, but I think Florida's depth is really going to show up. They're going to get hot and then spread it out.
I I think Florida is, and I said this before the tournament. I think they look like UConn did 2 years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
They are that good, and I bet
yep,
Houston to win the title. I really wish I would have put my money on Florida, but that's
yeah,
we're going to see how that plays out. But I will say this: Maryland is tough. They are
yeah.
tough. They
They're
are
very tough.
resilient. I think Colorado State just threw a haymaker at them, almost pulled it off. I have a funny feeling we're going to see a replay of the UConn game. I think Florida's going to win, but I think it's going to be a 2 or 3 point game. I think
Yep,
this is going to actually be probably the most exciting game we're going to see on
yeah.
Thursday.
Florida's
Oh,
depth, and then their returning players is what makes them look like UConn. They're
absolutely.
established, and that's what we talked about before. Where you're looking at Duke with these freshmen that are going to be flying down and possibly winning it all, and you got Florida coming flying down with seasoned veterans that have lived this.
You
So,
know, I
boom.
agree with that. I agree with it. But what I see is everything you're saying is absolutely correct. But I see guys like let's go back to NASCAR. Jimmy Johnson back in his heyday, he's cruising around, he's in seventh, eighth place, and there's 12 laps left. He knew he was going to win. Now, he
Yep.
didn't always do it, but in his mind, I'm going to win.
Yep.
Florida, that UConn game, when UConn kind of controlled the middle half of that game, I could see in Florida, they're like, no, we'll just get to the end. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Eh,
Yeah. When you're the team that needs the upset, your coach is preaching to you, don't make a mistake. Don't make a
Yes.
mistake. We
Yes.
have to be perfect. We have to be perfect. When the little mistakes start happening to one, two, four,
Mhm.
6, 8, that's when Florida just chomps on you and gets you.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? That
absolutely.
I think that's where Maryland's at. They're gonna slow down them from playing the wide
Right.
shots. They're gonna slow them
Hmm.
down and do the best they can. But when it starts opening up and they get tired, here comes Florida.
Absolutely.
That's what I think is gonna happen.
All right. We got our Friday games. We got the Michigan Wolverines on Scott's pick. Well, pre-tournament to win the Auburn Tigers. Auburn is an 8.5 point favorite. What do you think?
I still like Auburn. They're still
Yeah,
looking good.
yeah. 15-3 in SEC play. Jesus,
Yeah.
what you
Look,
know?
the Wolverines got overlooked by winning their championship in the tournament
Yeah.
rounds.
I thought it was
They're
a
here to
fluke.
stay.
I
Yeah,
thought it was a
well,
fluke,
everybody
but it's
did.
not.
Everybody
Yeah.
did. Yeah, it's not. They're playing well, but I don't think they got enough.
All right. I don't have a comment on that point spread. It's a little too tight there. Now we got number 4 Purdue in the bracket against number 1 Houston. Houston's a 7.5 point favorite.
Ah, Houston stellar.
Yeah,
You're,
their
that was your
defense is
pick
too good.
before.
Yeah, and I'm going to stick with it. I like
Yeah,
Florida. I think Florida's going to win the title, but I mean, I think
yeah,
I'm going to get to the Final Four. I think Purdue has a meta defense like Houston and what they're going to put
yeah.
down. I mean, that team is just suffocating. It is
You
just
know,
suffocating.
you know what would help Houston a lot if you got a red hat.
All my political base would leave me. You know, we look at Michigan and Auburn. We look at Purdue. Now we're coming back here. We're getting the next game on Friday is Ole Miss against Michigan State. Look how
Michigan
many look.
State.
Yeah, I get it, but hold on. Look how many SEC Big Ten matchups we have.
Yeah,
I mean, that's how much they are dominating it, right?
yeah, yeah. That is. That is how much they're dominating. But is that also why you're complaining this year that they
Yeah, I
put
am.
them in
I
so
am.
much?
I'm not. I am. It's
You know what I
yeah.
mean? They looked over
Hmm.
so much. I mean, but the Pac-12 is no longer around, so
Right,
we have no representation there.
right,
I
right.
mean,
They
we did.
consolidate,
Yeah,
but I
I mean,
mean, I guess
Oregon and Arizona.
I agree. I agree. But I think the bigger thing is we really didn't see a splash from the ACC. That's the other basketball
Yeah,
conference,
yeah,
right? And
yes,
we didn't
yes,
see anything really from the Big East. I mean, I
yes,
know, I mean, look, I get it. I agree with what you're saying. It's sad that the Pac-12's gone, but the ACC was the other blue blood conference,
yeah,
even
yeah,
more than the SEC. But the SEC just poured so much bloody money into it, and like
yep,
Texas didn't actually quote unquote get into the tournament. They were in the first four, and their coach didn't get him a win, so they fired him and they bring in Sean Miller. Okay, thank you. It's just write another check.
yeah,
Same conference that wrote a $73 million check to Jimbo Fisher to go hang out in Aruba for the rest of his life. They
right,
don't care. Just write the check. Let's go.
yeah, yeah. You're absolutely right. But
All right.
I hope this is not the future that we see
I
SEC.
know. I
You
agree.
know, I'm not looking forward to a tournament like this every year. I
It
mean,
sucks.
I'll still watch it, but yeah,
Yeah, we will. But you know what happens is, Scott, and I think you're going to understand this better than most of our people, is I think that's what kind of happened to NASCAR. They lost that edge and people started going, oh, man.
yeah,
Like, for instance, for years we had the Fontana race here, and literally the guy who got in front, he led 200 laps back
yep,
when they had 200 laps, and he was 14 seconds ahead of the third place guy. And you were
yep,
like, what am I doing? You're praying for a caution. And it
yeah,
was literally like watching reruns of Hee Haw. Like,
yeah.
wow, let's
Yeah,
move on.
and even if you were to if you were there at the race and looking for other racing, there was none to be found. They were all
None.
just spread out.
Yeah.
They were just gone. You know, if they would have made that a restrictor plate track, that would have been like Atlanta.
Right.
you know. But that track was designed for Indy.
It
Penske
was.
built
It
that
was.
for Indy. He didn't build it for NASCAR. It just so happened that NASCAR was taking up and Indy was going down, so they took over it. And now it's just rubble. Like
It's just rubble.
they keep saying they're going to build something, but they haven't built nothing.
Now they're talking about going to Bakersfield and whatever. And
Yeah,
honestly, the biggest mistake that NASCAR has made is they're not in big media centers. I mean,
yeah,
you can go, I mean, they've left LA. They're not
yep,
really in Frisco. Don't tell me Sonoma is Frisco. I know they're in
no,
Chicago, but good luck, man, competing against the Blackhawks and the Bears. And,
yeah, yeah,
I mean, they need to have a race in Dallas. They
yeah.
need to get one in Baltimore. They need to get races that are closer. And I understand there's not a lot of tracks out there because land is so bloody valuable. That's the
What
LA
I
thing.
What I've always wanted them to do after they left the California Speedway is why
Right.
don't you just jump behind the Long Beach Grand Prix that's already set up and then you come in the weekend after or 2 weeks after? Long
Yeah.
Beach ain't gonna care. They dropped so much money in the LA Coliseum for that track. Why don't you just jump on with that? They already got one street race in
I,
Chicago.
I, okay. Okay. You know what, Scott?
Hey, hey.
I'm gonna say this now, and I want to tell everybody on the podcast. Scott is 50. Scott has forgotten more about auto sports than I'll ever know. But this is where Scott he's still living in the bubble. Let me explain to you how motorsports works. Okay. Nobody wants the secondhand leftovers. And
Amen.
that is how now it's like we saw with Indy and F1. They thought they were badass, and F1 came in for the weekend and said, "This is ours." And
Yeah,
they
true.
don't like being kicked to the side. And NASCAR needs I guess they're probably getting it a little dose of humility. You make a great point. It's right there, but they don't want to say, "Oh, we're on this Grand Prix circuit. We're on the,"
Right.
they don't want that kind of arrogance. And to me, it's just about, why don't they have a street race in Vegas? I mean,
Right.
it is literally the most visual place in America next to
It
maybe
is.
Manhattan. Why don't
It is.
Frisco? Why don't you have a street? And look, I know they got ovals. I get that. That's their bread and butter, and that's what made them. But the product is falling away. I mean, I'm going to make a statement here. I'm going to tell you in 2 years, EPL is going to be bigger in America than NASCAR if it isn't already. And
Huh?
I'm not an EPL guy. I mean,
Right.
great. Premier League, great. Soccer. Who in our time, I back in the day, I used to tell Scott, NASCAR should make two circuits and they have Dale on one and
Ah,
Jeff Gordon on the other. And you know
ah,
what? I think that would have been the recipe because they would have got their brand out twice a weekend all over the country. You got one
yeah.
race in Atlanta, you got one in Seattle, you got
Right.
one, whatever. And it probably didn't work because they were at their zenith. They were crushing IndyCar, but now they're all oblivious. Nobody knows who
Yeah.
anybody is.
Right. Well, yeah, yeah. I mean, you don't got the Jeff Gordon, you don't got the Jimmy Johnson that's staying now. You're looking at Kyle Busch that he just made his announcement he's racing his son for the first time.
Right,
And, everybody's hyping up about that in the NASCAR world, but you're also talking about when NASCAR put down the rule about you can only have five teams, Roush, and then they
right,
cut Roush's team down.
right,
You know,
right,
and the sponsorship. Danny Hamlin on his podcast was saying, you know, not knowing what cars out there anymore. Like he's no longer in the FedEx that much.
right,
You
right.
know, what I mean, he's like we're confused, and the brand is by sponsor and number. Like we were talking about the race from Vegas or no, I mean Homestead, and
Yes.
I was giving out numbers because
Hmm.
the normal NASCAR fan
Yes.
goes by the numbers because you see the big five, you see the big
Sure.
11, the big 48, and the sponsor, the 48 Ally, the five, Hendrick. I'm only saying those two sponsors because they're
Yes.
on there for the longer
Yes.
period of time,
Right.
you know, so for me to say, oh, Bowman, you know most people don't get that. But if I put the 48 and the Bowman and the Showman, then I'm just people understand.
You
So
know, and you make a great point, like you usually do. And last week was we talked about this after the podcast. You are very, very knowledgeable. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give you a 9. Me, I'd give myself a 5, being honest about it. And you were going through those numbers, and I was having a hard time associating the names. And I thought after we talked about it, I thought, why doesn't NASCAR put the name of the driver on the car just to
it
build
is.
that build? Well, okay, maybe it is. I guess it is, right? Am I not
Yeah,
seeing it?
it's right above the driver door, and
Okay.
then and it's also on the windshield, right above the
Oh,
driver's head.
okay. All right.
Yeah,
Then I stand corrected. I
yeah. You've
guess
been
I
watching
I've been watching.
ESPN. Dun 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 dun. Little too much,
I'm
Jay.
trying. I'm
Inside
trying to
joke.
figure out
Inside.
the qualifying at F1. That's what I'm spending all my time on, Scott. All right. So our final game in on Friday in the NCAA tournament is the Kentucky Wildcats playing the Tennessee Volunteers. Tennessee is a 4.5 point favorite. Who do you like?
Tennessee looks like Houston. They're dominant. They're good. They're real good. I see them taking it all the way. Well, not all the way, but yeah,
Yeah,
I see them in
to
the
the
Final
final
Four.
eight. Yeah, yeah. Oh, you
Well,
got Kentucky to the final four?
no, Tennessee to Final Four.
Okay, okay. You think they're going to beat
Sorry.
Michigan
Hey,
State on the other
hey,
side?
I know you
Whoa,
got that
whoa.
blue. You got that blue hat on, and you finally
I
found a
do.
blue team.
Rocking the
You know what I
blue,
mean?
buddy.
Yeah.
Rocking the blue.
All about the blue. Jay is.
All I'm going to say is this: Tennessee lost twice this year to Kentucky. I wonder if
Yeah.
Kentucky sometimes teams
Yeah.
just line up right. And I
Yeah.
know everybody's gonna, let me tell you what happens here is if Kentucky wins this game, the narrative is in sports, well, they just had their number. And then if
Yep.
Tennessee wins, the narrative is, well, they had revenge. They had that
Yep.
fire in their belly. Okay,
Yep.
I personally like Tennessee here. I do worry that Kentucky did beat them twice this year,
Yep.
especially
Yep.
without some of their players. But I think Kentucky is a little too beat up. I like Tennessee, and I agree with Scott. I like them going to the Final Four. I think they're a better team than Michigan State, but we're going to
Yeah. I
find out
mean,
what happens.
this is the problem when it's a good thing and a bad thing because we've seen teams face each other twice, multiple times.
Sure.
Over the years, we got multiple times, but they know what the team is bringing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So you know what the other what they're holding in their hands pretty much. It
Absolutely.
is, can you do something to stop it or change what you do? You know, Kentucky did take 2 wins, but you know, I just think Tennessee is just too strong, too strong.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. That is a good team. All right. We're going to be back Friday. We're going to recap the Thursday. We're going to preview NASCAR and maybe F1. That's how well prepared I was for this podcast. I don't
Right,
even know if
right, right.
F1's running this weekend, but I do know
Yep.
NASCAR and the boys are going to be out there. Let me ask you real quick. Do they take off Easter like they used to, or is that still a thing, or
One more time, you broke up a second.
does NASCAR take off Easter weekend? I know this isn't Easter weekend, but remember how they
They
used
took,
to?
yeah, no, I think they're racing it this weekend. I
Okay,
gotta check.
I know, I
I
know.
got
It's
multiple
NASCAR.
things going on,
I know you got a lot going on.
Jay's asking a lot out of me now. He's throwing. Hey, our one segment that we have not covered though. Where's Jay at today? He's a weatherman. He does
I'm a
track
weatherman.
reporting.
I'm a weatherman. I'm here at a local airport waiting for planes to come in. Maybe one will take me out. Hey, if it does, then upload it. It'll go viral. Here's a podcaster who got taken out by an airplane. It'll be my last moments on earth. I'll have 6,000 views. God bless. Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Rocking
they
it.
gotta like and subscribe for that to happen. Come on
Oh,
now.
I love it. God damn, you're good. Damn, you're good. All right, everybody. We'll be back Friday. I'll see you soon. All right.
Do 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 do.